Good evening, I'm the Game Tutor, and tonight we're going to be looking at A Long Way Down, a deck building roguelike arbor sheet card game in the same vein as Slay the Spire. Now, having given Slay the Spire my game of the year last year, I've been eagerly moving into 2020 to find other games to scratch that proverbial roguelike deck building itch. Now, A Long Way Down, recently released on Steam and soon coming to Switch, is a game that on the surface looks fairly similar and has quite a few differences, for better or for worse, but sadly it's normally for worse. Now, unlike Slay the Spire, you begin the game with a pre-built deck that you build before your run, changing if you happen to come across an armoury rather than advancing through branching paths. Instead, you build a map in front of you in a mechanic not too dissimilar to Guild of Dungeoneering, a decent game that we reviewed a few years ago. Actually, this map building mechanic is one of the strongest parts of the game and is actually quite fun. Now, as you progress through the map, you encounter enemies, and this is where the combat is a lot similar to Slay the Spire. Unfortunately, whereas Slay the Spire is a game with complex mechanics, where the main gameplay loop sees you trying to match powerful synergies with the cards, generally fights in A Long Way Down, at least in the early access version I've been playing, are largely devoid of tactics, and most of the cards are fairly simplistic in their nature, causing either an attack, a drop in percentage, or a raise in defense, or a mixture of the two. Now, herein lies the problem that due to the lack of synergy and strategy, whenever you die it kind of feels like the fight was just impossible and simply requires you to go back to the start and upgrade your cards for another attempt. The art style is pretty reasonable with some decent sound design, but the cards are a little bit uninspired and definitely could do with a bit more personality. As an early access title, A Long Way Down has made a fairly promising start, but it must fine tune its deck building mechanic and the cards available to you in order to improve, as currently the map mechanic is way more interesting than the core fights. But it's not necessarily going to set the world on fire, and it's definitely not pulling me away from Slay the Spire, but potentially this could be a game to keep an eye on as it continues to develop over the next year or so.